Real esoteric spirituality without all of the fluff, without all of the nonsense. This is the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. Click subscribe and then hit the little bell button so that you can be notified whenever I've uploaded a video or when I'm doing the live Q&A videos. Okay, so you're seeing me figure out my new software, live streaming software, so my apologies. All right, so today we're going to be talking about Rune Shamanism, and there are three types of Rune Magic, the way that I teach it. The first one is called Rune Shamanism. So before we go any further, you need to know these three links right here, because I have books on runes. So people, if they're new to the channel, they come on and they type in, will you do a video on this? And what about that? And it's like, do you have any idea how much time I've spent talking about runes? Go to courses.thunderwizard.com. You will see a link to all of my books. Click on that, and then you will have access to the three books that I've written. First one is Rune Shamanism. That's what we're going to be talking about today. If you want a rune reading from me, you go to runereadings.thunderwizard.com, and sometimes we do free rune readings on the channel every now and then just to show people what it's all about. We're not going to be doing that tonight. And then people, again, those people that say, will you do a video on this rune and do a video on that rune? All right, so runecertification.thunderwizard.com is a service where you get access to every single video I have ever made about runes. That includes all of the rune videos on the free thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. It also includes all of the videos that I've done on runes extensively on the thunderwizard.com, which is the subscription site. Then it also includes all of the rune videos that I've done on DVD. So there are 9 DVDs altogether, 3 parts. Each one is made up of 3 DVDs. That is also on this site, runecertification.thunderwizard.com, as well as even more videos that I've done about runes for that site. And you can also become certified, become a Thunder Wizard certified rune reader, and you will get your own page at runereadings.thunderwizard.com, and you'll get your own page where you can advertise yourself, assuming that you pass the test. And one person recently did, and I haven't got to putting him back up, but we've got a few people doing that. So there's that. So you need that information. So I know that people are going to be coming on for the live stream, but anybody watching this from the beginning, before you start typing in, will you do a video on, all of it's going to be here somewhere. So put the time and effort and look for it. All right. So today we're going to be talking about Rune Shamanism. So Rune Shamanism is a book that I've written, and I'm going to be taking bits and pieces of some of the chapters in the book, and I'm going to be going into more depth. So before we go any further, before we even start talking about the 3 types of rune magic that there are that I teach, a fourth one would be bind runes. I don't teach bind runes because, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge or experience of it. I understand the concept, but for me, just working with each rune individually is so powerful. I have no need as of yet to get fancy and create bind runes. I'm going to say this about runes. This could just be me talking, so be aware of that. Everybody's different. Everybody is made differently. My experience with the runes are that I'm incredibly sensitive to them. If I even think about a rune, the power of that rune will come into my life. If I talk about it, especially, like one of the reasons that I'm not constantly doing rune videos all the time is because when I did go through on the Patreon channel, on the thunderwizard.com channel, the subscription site, I went through each one of the runes individually. And what ended up happening is I lived each one of them. And as soon as I started, talking about Fehu, the power of Fehu started coming into my life. And I realized, holy crap, this is what I can expect for each one. But I'd already started. I couldn't stop. I made the commitment to do it. So I went through each one of them. And so you can imagine what my life went through. Here's what I've learned about the runes. For me, I can only talk about me. For me, the runes are forces of transformation. They're not just things that you dabble in and use. You noticed there aren't any tattoos anywhere, right? And I've thought about getting tattoos, and if I were, I would get some rune tattoos. There's a reason why you don't see any rune tattoos anywhere on this arm. It's because when I work with the runes, they are so transformative. They are so incredibly transformative for me that I wouldn't dare presume to put one of the root forces of the creation of the universe onto my body. I give the racists a hard time. One of the things that I find extremely offensive is how racists have tried to hijack our indigenous religion and use it for their political and racial purposes. And one of the mistakes that they make, number one, is they put runes on their body and they associate it with some kind of racialist, racialist expression. They have no idea what they're bringing onto themselves. No clue. One example is the swastika. Now, the swastika is the Sanskrit name, but and there are some people who mistakenly think that the swastika that the Nazis took it from the Vedics. But the filfat, which is what it was called in Europe, was indigenous to them as well. It's an Indo-European symbol that both the Vedics and the Germanics and other Indo-Europeans had access to. But when the racialists put that emblem, when the Nazis put the swastika, the filfat emblem, to associate that with their agenda, what they did not realize was that they were calling down upon them what that symbol represents. And we all know what happened to them. So that's the good news. The good news is that they were stupid enough to align themselves with the swastika. And so they brought the power of the swastika, the power of the filfat, onto them. The swastika is not a symbol of violence, racism, exclusion. It is an incredibly powerful symbol of transformation. And so when people put the Othal rune, or they put any other kind of rune on them, in the attempt to try and associate themselves with some kind of racialist or any kind of separatist, anything that has to do that excludes other people or targets other people or has any kind of misunderstanding, you are going to call the transformative power of that symbol onto yourself. So I am not so full of myself. I'm quite full of myself, but I am not so full of myself as to think that I can withstand the power of any of the runes. That's why none of them are on me. None of them. Now that's just me. Maybe I'm different. Maybe I've got a karma attached to it. Maybe because of who I am and what I do, I've got a sensitivity to them. But I can barely chant them. I almost never chant them unless I am absolutely sure that I want that power into my life. And if I have any doubts, I leave it alone. I'm not stupid. I don't play around with landmines. I just don't do it. So the reason for that is because you have to understand what the runes are. The runes are the sound syllables, the syllables and the sounds of the universe. The universe is created and maintained and transformed through these sound syllables. My ancestors called them the runes. Rune has two meanings. It means whisper, and there's a reason for that, which I share in this book, and I'll share it with you tonight. And the other one is mystery or secret. So there is a secret method. I believe that the word rune was assigned to these because there are words for sounds, there are words for energy, there's words for all kinds of things. They chose the word secret and whisper to identify runes. So to me, that tells me why my ancient ancestors who first discovered and developed this science, why they called it that. The runes are the fundamental forces of the universe. When you chant them, when you draw them, when you think about them, when you interact with them on any level, you are tapping into the source of the creation, the maintenance, and the destruction, the transformation of the entire universe. I don't think that I have the ability to hold on to any of those things. So I would not be stupid enough to put it on my body. That's me. There are other people that do it and they seem to be fine with it. You know, the universe is a forgiving place. And, you know, like when it comes to mantra, this is mantra is associated with sound as well. You know, the thing about mantra and mantra science is if you don't know any better, the universe gives you a pass. There's no shortage of people out there handing out mantras like candy, and they have no idea what they're doing. There was a guy who was around for a while. He's since passed away. I talked to him on the phone, actually. And he wrote a bunch of books on mantras. And he did this thing called mantra cocktails, where he would take 5 or 6 different mantras and smash them together and say, chant these in a row, and it will do this for you and do that for you. And what he didn't understand about mantra is that each mantra is associated with a planet and with a deity. And that when you are working with a mantra, you should be working exclusively with the power of that mantra, which is the planet and the deity associated with that. And then there is the seer of the mantra. This is the individual or the ascended master who saw it. That's important. It means they didn't invent it. They didn't say, here's something, I'll throw this together. They saw it. In the shamanic state, they saw and or heard this mantra, and they remembered it. And so that seer sits on the top of your head when you chant your mantra. So if you take 5 or 6 mantras and smash them together, you got 5 or 6 rishis all sitting on top of your head, you got 5 or 6 deities and planets, and you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea if those planets are working for you or working against you, because everybody's different. You know, for me, Mars is, you know, my most faithful friend when it comes to doing ritual and all that, and I can show you in my chart why that is. For some people, Mars is going to cause you a lot of problems, and you'll experience these things very challenging. Of course, it's burning through negative karma, which means you're going to experience all that negativity. So unless that's what you choose to do, you don't know what you're doing. But if, like most people who don't understand mantra science, you get a pass. If you find a mantra online and you start to do it, the universe goes, you know what, they don't know what they're doing, we'll give them a pass. We won't let them really experience that. But once you know the rules, then you're responsible for that. So that means every time I choose to do a mantra, I have to know what I'm doing. If I give a mantra to a client, I have to know what's going on in their chart. And I have given mantras to clients, and we found out that's not the right mantra for you. Give them another one and things switch around and things get a lot better. So I'm held responsible for the ones that I do and the ones that I give. Runes are the same. If you don't understand what the runes are, in my experience, the majority of rune teachings out there are mistaken. at best. And so if you're, I got into it with somebody yesterday or the day before who, it's not her fault. She's saying that she's living in Esau, and she described that as being stuck or frozen. And I gave her, a good tongue lashing about, hey, that's not what that means. And that's not her fault. That's what she's been told, because if you type in Rune Esau meaning in Google, you're going to get all of these interpretations that tell you ice, stuck, ego, bad. So they have no clue what they're talking about. But if you understand what the runes are, if you understand that the runes are an extremely concentrated form of Kundalini fire, and if you understand what Kundalini is, then so much the better. Kundalini is somebody said it perfectly. Kundalini, I'll use my words, but I'll take a phrase that they use. Kundalini is the psychological, spiritual fire in your spinal column that roots you to this world. This is what people don't understand about Kundalini. They want to have Kundalini awakening. They say they're having Kundalini awakening, and they think that means that they're going to escape this world. Kundalini is here to bind you to this world. Kundalini is what gives you the human experience of desire and attachment. And as you go through a Kundalini awakening, you learn to let go of those attachments that don't serve you and hold on to the attachments that your soul needs in order to progress. Kundalini is about being attached to this limited world, but to experience it from a spiritual perspective. The runes are not just Kundalini, they are more than that, but that is what is stimulated when you use them. And if you do not understand the power of that, then you are asking for trouble. And again, I am telling you now what this is, so now you're responsible. If you read my books, you watch my videos, and you learn what it is that I teach that the runes are, you will be educated into a more clear understanding of what they are. And you will now be responsible for what you do with that power. Because the other thing I've learned about the runes is, if you use them in ways either out of your ignorance or trying to use them for negative, destructive purposes, they will turn on you. That will be your experience. Your experience is that they'll turn on you. They're not turning on you. They're just going to bring what they are. And if you're trying to go in another direction, in other words, let's say, for example, somebody wanted to use Esau because they thought that would give them control over other people. Imagine somebody chanting Esau to get control over other people. Well, somebody who wants to control other people is somebody who has a very low self-esteem, who is insecure, who does not have a clear sense of self, does not have a mature sense of identity. Now that person is going to get the full brunt of what Esau is. Esau is the empowered self, the empowered identity. So what happens when you try and grab onto that sword of fire and use it to empower your disempowerment, to empower your insecurity? It's going to feel like it's fighting against you, because it's trying to say to you, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to get you more empowered in yourself. So you will incur upon yourself situations which will force you to see how insecure you are. And then if you go in the right direction towards your empowerment, when you are empowered in your own identity, you accept everybody exactly as they are. You do not need to compete with anybody. You also do not need to bow down to anybody. You have a clear sense of self, of who you are. And then the universe serves you, and you have better relationships with others because you know who you are. So that's just one example. So Right now I'm looking at the chapters for Rune Shamanism. So, Rune Shamanism is one of 3 types of rune magic that I teach. Rune Shamanism, I use the word shamanism because I believe that the first method of using runes is to empower yourself. You meditate upon the runes, you chant them in the special way that I'm going to teach you before the end of this video. You chant them in the special way that they're done. You draw them and you, quote, worship them because they are deities in their own right. And when you work with it that way, you are using the runes to transform yourself, to transform your limitation into what your highest potential, your highest awareness. So that is a personal shamanic experience. Shamanism, what is shamanism? Shamanism is not taking power plants. It's not dropping acid or smoking THC or drinking ayahuasca. There are shamans who do that. That's not what shamanism is. Shamanism is the practice of connecting to all of the universe, understanding that everything in the universe, whether it be a pair of glasses, whether it be a rock or a tree or an animal or a cloud or a person or a deity or a star or a concept, that everything in the universe has its own personality, its own consciousness, and that you can communicate with that consciousness. That's all that shamanism is. So you don't even ever have to go into a shamanic state. You don't ever have to go into an altered state of consciousness. Because the ideal shaman is somebody who doesn't need to do that. People who need to go into, and I do on a regular basis, so I'm talking about myself, people who need to go into altered states of consciousness to communicate with the aspects of the universe are doing so because they're limited in their ability to connect to everything and to relate to everything. So the ideal shaman is someone who can, in their conscious awakening, be in all of the 9 worlds and communicate on all levels with all beings. That is the goal. So to be dependent upon altered state of consciousness is a limitation. And to have a crutch like a chemical, to use a chemical especially to force you into a near-death experience, which is what happens whenever you take mushrooms, ayahuasca, even THC, anything that does that. What's happening is that poison is putting your body into a near-death experience. And so that's a pretty extreme thing to do. That might be necessary in order to crack you open and get you out of your own limited illusion. You may need that really intense, extreme measure in order to crack you out of yourself so you can see the other realms. But you run the risk of being thrown into your own unconscious delusions. A lot of people come out of shamanic experiences, they come out of dreams, they come out of trips, they come out of using power plants, and what's happened is that they have simply journeyed to their own unconscious mind. So there is no shortcut to what shamanism really is. So I don't know what got me on that, but rune shamanism is one. The next one is rune divination. We're not going to talk about that. That's what most people use the runes for, and it's a perfectly valid use, which is to use the runes to divine. And we'll talk about that when we talk about rune divination. But rune divination is really about seeing the energies at any given snapshot. What are the energies doing? It doesn't say what's going to happen. You can't, because the future really hasn't happened yet. So you can't really say with 100% certainty, here's what's going to happen. You can only look at where the energy wants to go and make predictions. And sometimes the currents of energy are moving very strongly towards something, and you can say with some some degree of certainty this is going to happen on such and such date. But my experience, the runes aren't interested in that. The runes are only interested in showing you energies. I'll share with you something while I still have it. You know, I went through a year and a half ago, somebody close to me was dying. And so I was asking the runes a lot, is so-and-so going to die? And I never got a straight answer until I realized that the runes are like, you don't understand. For us, there is no death. There is just a transformation of being, a transformation of consciousness. So whenever I would look for death in a rune reading, I couldn't find it. Because energy is just simply, is always transforming. So that's the closest you get, is transformation. It's the closest you get. And you can have a transformation and still stay in the body, or you can have the ultimate transformation and move to another realm of awareness, but it's not death as we look at it in our physical limitation. So the second one is rune divination. The third is advanced rune shamanism, and I will talk about that when we talk about that. So I won't go into all the stuff I say in the book. I'll talk briefly about the rune alphabet. So I only use the Elder Futhark. If you don't know what that is, Google it, Elder Futhark. The Elder Futhark is the alphabet of the ancient Germanic people, and it's called the Elder Futhark because it was the alphabet that all of the Germanic tribes used 2,000 years ago and earlier. And the reason why I don't use the other Futharks is because, number one, the Elder Futhark is, it's already a self-contained unit. It's 3 sets of 8. 8 is a number of dynamic transformation. The 9 is like death, rebirth, transformation. 8 is, making your way up there. You have 3 sets of that. So 3 is the number of the 3-dimensional space-time that we have, mind, body, spirit, the 3 centers of the body, Odin, Vili, and Ve, blah, blah, blah. Everywhere in the world you have this 3, which represents space-time, the 3 aspects of space-time. And so you have 3 sets of 8. And you have, each one of these is functioning on a different level. You have the first 8, which is, now they each, by the way, each rune works on every level, so let me be clear on that. But in my experience, the first 8 most dynamically resonate with what we would consider to be the physical realm. The second 8, which are the most challenging and transformative. If you look at it, I'm looking at the Futhark right now. The second 8 has 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 runes that people almost always classify as negative or challenging, which, as I said, there's no such thing. What that means is that this is about psychological transformation. That is the most challenging place for us, is the psychological transformation. And then the third 8 vibrates most intensely on the spiritual plane. So the reason why I use the Elder Futhark is because they're already just self-contained in and of themselves. There's no need to shorten it or to add to it. It just confuses things. The reason why the other rune alphabets came about, the younger Futhark, the Anglo-Saxon Futhark, those were a result of dialect changes in language and pronunciation. And so they needed different symbols to represent different sounds. For instance, like when you look at the Yuhuaj rune, the one that looks like a hook, right? Comes up, down like that, and up like that. The yew tree one. You hear, I have to explain it because the way I pronounce it is Yuhuaj. When you look at it, the letters that people put for it is EI. And how do you tell the difference between Awaz and Ehwaj? Because that's not the sound. The sound for the Yuhuaj rune is U. U. We still have that in some languages, German, I think, and some of the other Germanic languages have an U sound to it. But that's the letter for that sound. We don't have that in English. We don't have that U, that hard U sound. We don't have it anymore. But the closest we get is an EI, because it's not an U and it's not an E, it's an U. The Greeks used the Y letter. That's why sometimes the Y letter is a U sound, because in Greek, that sound was U. So we used to have it, and the symbol for it is the Yu-Huaj rune, the U tree rune. So as our language changed, we had to create different symbols to represent the different sounds. And so that's what the Anglo-Saxon is, a bunch of different symbols, unnecessary symbols and sounds. I got nothing against them. They're great, they're poetic and meaningful, but it doesn't make any sense to mess with it. It's already a science that works. Don't screw with it. The other reason that I hold on to it is because if you think about what was going on 2,000 years ago and before, you will know that throughout all of the Germanic tribal lands, you did not have any cohesive government or country. You had a bunch of clans and a bunch of tribes that were loosely affiliated. A lot of them were constantly warring with themselves. And so there wasn't a need for like a Germanic, quote unquote, alphabet. There was no need for it. So one of the problems with academia, which by the way, academia does not know where the runes came from. They assume. So every time you read, if you type in the origin of the runes, you're going to get somebody, some academician or some rune master who's going to say that the runes were the Germanic tribal attempt to recreate the alphabets of the Mediterranean cultures. And that doesn't make any sense, because if that were the case, then just as there was in the Mediterranean world, there were a bunch of different alphabets and symbols for them. There would be a bunch of different alphabets and symbols in the Germanic time. You only see the runes start to change symbols later on. But 2,000 years ago, when they were the most disconnected, you find this one alphabet. That doesn't make sense. If they were trying to copy the Romans and the Phoenicians, and they would have a bunch of different alphabets depending on which tribe you went to. But they didn't have that. They all had the same one. The other big problem with the idea that the Futhark is the Germanic attempt to copy the alphabet of whatever, the Phoenicians or the Romans or the Etruscans or whomever. The other big problem with that is that if they were to copy, let's say, the Roman alphabet, they would go in the same order, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now that is what was happening in the Mediterranean. The Greek alphabet, the Roman alphabet, I think even the Hebrew alphabet, I could be wrong about that, but I think all of them in the Mediterranean all started with A, B, C, D, F, and G. The Greek was alpha, beta, gamma, delta. So if the Germanic tribes wanted to copy them, they would have copied their alphabet in that order. There would be absolutely zero reason for them to take all of the letters and jumble them up like that. And then again, if it were these jumbled up letters, then all the different tribes would have different ideas of how that went. They weren't like that. They were very practical. If they were going to copy what somebody else was doing, they'd copy it. Oh, A, B, C, D, F, and G. Okay, A, B, C, D, F, and G. They would do that. The one phrase of the Germanic people that has always worked for them is, if it works, don't fix it. That's a very Germanic concept. They would take whatever technology was, if it worked, they would use it. There would be no need to screw it up like this. Why is that important? It's important because it was universal among all of the Germanic tribes, even though they were warring with each other. And it was all this completely different order of alphabet. It had nothing to do with the order of symbols and letters and sounds that were being used in the Mediterranean. What does that tell you? It tells you that this is an extremely ancient Germanic tradition. It also tells you that it was a sacred tradition, because if it wasn't sacred, somebody would have screwed with it. The only time that you have different futharks is when the futhark is no longer sacred, because Christianity has come in and completely destroyed any idea of any, indigenous sacred tradition of Europe. They wiped that out. So now you could pick and choose and do whatever the hell you wanted. It didn't mean anything. So the fact that it's the elder futhark is the same among all of the Germanic tribes 2,000 years ago. The fact that it has no connection to the order of the alphabets that I'm aware of in the Mediterranean, from which they are supposedly copied from. And the fact that we know that runes were used for spiritual purposes tells me that this is a very ancient Germanic tribal tradition that goes back to when there was just one, Germanic identity, which could have been tens of thousands of years ago. It wasn't until after they broke up into tribes and started fighting with each other. There must have been a time when there was, a much smaller group of people. When did this happen? I believe that this happened during the Ice Ages, because Indo-Europeans all share the same language. I'm speaking English right now, but it's the same language that they speak in France and in Spain and in Italy and in Greece and in Iran. It's the same in India. It's the same language. It's just been separated by so much time that it's warped into something now it's not mutually intelligible anymore. But at one point in time, there was one language which we would call now Indo-European. And these Indo-European speakers moved into the Northern Hemisphere about 50,000 years ago from Africa. And they went spread all over to different parts. And then the Ice Ages came in. The Ice Ages came in, and these walls of ice walled them in. And so you have the area of the Iberian Peninsula is where the Celtic people came from. You had this little area just between what is now Spain and Germany, which a little tiny area of France. That was where the people who became the Germanics were from. The Slavic people were somewhere else, and then of course the Vedic people would have been somewhere else. I'm not going to get into all the controversy around that stuff, but what happens is they're locked in by ice walls for 40,000 years, 40,000. So here you have people who are speaking the same language, and they're isolated from each other for 40,000 years. What ends up happening during those 40,000 years is that there's going to be shifts in the language, shift in the pronunciation, shift in word order, shift in all that kind of stuff, until then when the ice melts, which was 10,000 years ago. Now you have these people who are Indo-European, but they look different. They have a different ethnicity because they lived in different conditions, and their skin color changed, their eye color changed, their facial features changed, their language shifted and changed, and their religion shifted and changed. When you look deep into it, you find a substrata of something that they all share. And the one thing that they shared was this understanding of the magic of the spoken word, that the spoken word was magical. Now, the Germanic tribes came up with a technique, which I'm now going to share with you, of chanting the runes for magical purposes. Bear in mind, the runes are nothing more. There's just nothing deep about it. I mean, it's deep, but there's nothing complicated about it. The runes are simply the sound building blocks of language. That's it. Each one of those runes covers a sound or a syllable that can be made with the mouth. That's it. So each one of these sounds has its own inherent creative properties. And when you focus on that, you are focusing on one of the 24 major sources of power that created the universe. This is what makes humans divine. This is what makes them Man, the divine mind on earth. They can speak. Just to give you another idea about the power of sacred sound, I learned this a long time ago when I was an actor. And I had read some article, and I was teaching acting, and I was trying to explain to people that, when you go on stage and you're playing a character, you don't just throw the words out. They have to mean something to you. And that words, the sounds of them, when you speak them, they affect people. Now, I wasn't trying to be spiritual. I was trying to help them understand so they could be authentic when they spoke their lines. And I read some article in the newspaper somewhere about a tribe in Africa that when they wanted to get rid of a tree, instead of going and chopping it down, what would happen is that the whole tribe would gather around the tree and they would scream at the tree. And the tree would die. And I thought that was such an amazing concept. And how true it is. And that whoever those people were, I didn't even bother to remember which tribe it was. Whatever tribe that was, they remembered. They remembered from very ancient times the power of sound. And the power of sound connected with intent. I don't know if they were using a specific word to kill the tree, but the sound was enough. That is also, by the way, what happened in Britannia. When the Romans invaded Britannia, the Celtic tribes, as they were, literally the Roman army is pushing them into the sea. And the Druids were, and I think there were priestesses. I can't remember exactly what was happening, but as they're being pushed over the cliff into the sea, they are screaming curses at the Romans. And there are accounts of the Roman soldiers were trembling. They were shitting their pants because of this, what was being screamed at them. And then we could discuss whether or not what effect that had on the Roman Empire, blah, blah, blah. But we used to understand that. We used to understand that sound had power. What's interesting to me is that the Druids didn't have enough magical ability with their screaming to drive the Romans away. And we could muse on why that was. Was that because we were moving into Kali Yuga? Was that because of, who knows why? So each one of these sounds is a power that creates, maintains, or transforms the universe. And so when you speak them, there is a secret way to do it. I'll share this with you how I know this to be true. If anybody has studied Taoism, Taoist mysticism, there's a thing called, or a teaching, a practice called the 5 element sounds. It's most commonly called the 5 element sounds. And it's a wonderful practice. And there are 5 different sounds which stimulate the 5 elements. And it's used for self-healing, it's used for all kinds of things. And it works. It's an absolute science. It really does work. And so I used to do that and practice it. And I had this feeling there was something about it. I had this feeling that something was missing. And then I got a hold of the person who came up with what we now know of as the 5 element sounds. His name was Tao Hong Jing. And he, about 2,000 years ago, He was one of the first Taoist mystics of the Taoist mystical tradition. He was one of the first. And he wrote a practice and taught, but he didn't teach it as 5-element sounds. He taught it, it's actually called 5-element breaths. And he states the way to make the sound is to not use your voice, to let your vocal cords feel like they're doing whatever they're doing. But what you're doing is you're going to breathe the sounds out, and you're going to do it so softly that no sound comes out, and that air comes out of the mouth and the nose at the same time. And when you do that, when you can do it so that breath is coming out the nose and the mouth at the same time, you immediately open up the third eye and you go into trance immediately. And this is how he taught it. But as you can hear, it's a pretty subtle technique. You have to put some subtlety in it. You have to learn how to do it. Because if you don't, then you won't get it. So the easiest way to do it is, no, just say it. Just say the sound. Ooh, that's one of the sounds. Ooh, H-U. Ooh, that's the earth sound. But what you're supposed to do is to do it so softly. And in order to do it so softly, you have to do it very slowly. And in order to get the air to come out of your nose and your mouth at the same time, you have to do it very, very softly with almost no effort. So if I were to sit here and do it right now, it would be. And then immediately puts me into an altered state. So I'd already learned that. And I came across the runes, and then I was researching what the word rune meant, and I found out it meant both secret and whisper. And I thought, what if that's the technique? So sure enough, I did that with each one of the runes, and holy crap, I'm getting chills thinking about it. The power associated with it was phenomenal. And that's why I believe it was called the runes, because if you wanted to call it the sounds, you could have called it the sounds. If you wanted to call it the creators, if you wanted to call it, there are all kinds of words for it, but they chose a very specific word which meant secret whisper. That also tells me that, perhaps 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, when this was an oral tradition, that this was taught in secret. That you learned, because they didn't have writing back then. And everybody talked and they spoke language. So they intuitively knew how to make all these sounds, but to sit down and to break them down and say, here's the F sound, here's the U sound, here's the th sound, here's the ah sound, R sound. To go into that with somebody to explain what each one of those sounds does when you use them. And to explain to them, here's how you get into the essence of those. You do this secret whisper. Rune. Mystery. This is the essence of Rune Shamanism. And so I could have called the book Rune Galder, but that term is thrown around, and it's used so superficially. I wanted to give the feeling of this is a shamanic practice. I also wanted to give it the feeling of this is an ancient practice. It is my belief, I can't prove it. My logic and common sense and experience, as well as my, other, intuitive experience, or whatever you want to call that, tells me that that's how they were used. The further you go back in time, the more powerful, the more ancient, the more intense the power is associated with these symbols. So that's my introduction to Rune Shamanism for today. I will now open it up and see if there are any questions. Again, if you're new to the channel, I prefer that you only interact with me with a question. If you have a question, write the word question and write out your question in a logical, coherent manner so that I can answer it. And that way I don't have to spend a lot of time scrolling through things. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on right now. Let me see, how many people do we got on here? It's not telling me. 37 people. All right. So, Dragon's Truth question. Yeah, I'm very happy to be back on YouTube. Thank you, sir. Dragon's Truth question. Have you looked into the Armanen rune row? So, if you watched from the beginning, I made it clear that I only use the Elder Futhark, and I told you why. The answer is yes, but let me once again state something from the beginning. As a rule, I do not talk about other teachers or other teachings, because by doing that, I end up having to take a stand, and I either have to support or criticize another teacher or another teaching. I don't want to do that. I know that you mean no disrespect, but it's disrespectful of you to ask me about some other teacher. So, ask me about what I teach. That's what I want to talk about. Yes, I'm familiar with them, and I won't make any other statement outside of that. All right, Ghost in the Machine. Question. So Richard Bullard, I can tell you have a question. I need you to write the word question and then write your question out, in a coherent question, and I'll answer it. Ghost in the Machine. Question. How do I know which rune calls to work with me? What are you asking me for? Seriously, what the hell are you asking me for? How am I supposed to know what rune is calling you to work with it? I don't know how to answer that. Use your own intuition. It's okay with me if you don't know, but the only way you're going to find out is if you put the time and effort into researching it. I'm looking, these are old glasses I have. I stopped wearing these because my fiance, a year and a half ago, she didn't like them, so I started wearing those other ones. But I found these and I started wearing them. But yeah, these look like I look like an old man. All right, so let's see what else. Joe Connolly, question. Are the runes the same as the gods? Tyr is a rune and a god, for example. Well, I mean, obviously the runes aren't the same as the gods because they worship deities that there isn't a name for in the rune alphabet. The rune alphabet, I will say this, the deities that are in the rune alphabet are among the most ancient, if not the most ancient. Tyr is one example. Tiwaz. So, Joe, you're probably new to my channel. Those who have been around are going to hear me say this. I've said it a bunch of times. I've got it in my books. You guys read my books. Seriously. Put some time and effort, study my books. I'll answer a lot of this stuff. There's stuff in there that is going to be really powerful stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else. So, in my book, I talk about who Tyr is. So, in the Norse language, the R sound on the end is indicative of a nominative case. So, for instance, like the word, give me a word, I don't know. Latin has the US sound, US. Dominus, the word Lord. Like the Lord of a house was a dominus. In fact, dom means house, so dominus was the Lord of the house. The US sound means it's in the nominative state. In English, we don't use cases anymore. But for instance, like if we want to say, give it to him. So if he is nominative, then him is to him, the accusative case. So Tyr, the R is the nominative case. It's not really part of the word. The word isn't Tyr. You would say that in a Norse language because you had to do that. But the word is T or D. And in the Old English, his name is Diwaj or Tiu. Tiu was his name. That is the same as Diupiter, Jupiter, Diupiter, Sky Father, Divine Father, Star Father. It's the same in Greek. We know him as Zeus, but Zeus is the vocative. His name in Greek is not Zeus, his name is actually D. So T and D, it's the same deity. And who is Zeus? He's the sky father, the holder of the lightning, he's the king of the gods. Jupiter, sky father, is the king of the gods who holds the lightning. Tiu used to be the god who, in Germanic tribal tradition, very long time ago, in prehistoric times, he was the king of the Germanic gods as well. And he was Di, Ti. The Chinese have a word for king and divine, and whenever you want to take somebody and, like, if you want to turn somebody into a god, you would put the sound T on the end of it. So for instance, there's a god called Guan Ti. Guan, the divine. Ti means divine. The D in Chinese is the ancient god of the North Star, the king of the heavens. It's the same guy, talking about the same deity. The word deity comes from that. So he is in the runes. Tiu is in the runes. That tells you that this is an extremely ancient god, probably the most ancient god. There's one other god in there, which is Ing. Ing is the god of sacred fire. In Indo-European language, you have two words for fire. One is the external and one is the internal spiritual. We no longer have that in English. The word fire means external, means the physical, actual fire that burns stuff. There was an internal fire which was used for, which meant internal spirituality, and that was Ing. In the Latin and the Greek, it's the same one. It's Egnis or Ignis. In the Vedic, it's Agni. But the original pronunciation was Ink. And so you see a very old Indo-European pronunciation of the sacred god of fire. The fire god, his name was Ing. And this is a rune, Ing. So are the runes the same as the gods? You have gods in the runes. And there's, what, at least two of them. How many are there? Or let me get my rune thing out here. I got to use this. Where is it? Rune wheel. All right, so this is from Advanced Rune Shamanism. Go to courses.thunderwizard.com to find that book, to learn that what you're looking at here, which is a rune wheel. I won't get into that right now. So let's see here. We've got Thurs. So the closest we get to Thor in the runes is the Thurisaj rune. That is his rune. It's the rune of the giant. So we could say that that rune is a deity as well, although not as easily as the others. Ing is there, Perthro, Kenaj, Dagaj, Elchaj, Kebo, Othal, Sawul. Sawul means, so the S rune, Sowilo, Sawul. Sawul is the ancient Germanic pronunciation of the word soul. We spell it in English S-O-U-L because the Anglo-Saxons took ah sounds and turned them into O sounds. So that's why we spell it S-O-U-L, because it was originally S-A-W-U-L, Sawul. Sawul. Sawul means the sun. It means the internal aspect of the sun. Sawul. So that could be a deity as well. What does that mean? You have a Sawul. You have a soul. It means that you're a deity. So you're a god. So the short answer is no, the runes are not the gods, but they definitely have some of the most ancient gods in them. So perhaps at one time, these were all of the gods that they worshipped then. Maybe they only worshipped these gods. That's something to think about. Let's see what else. Rune Magic question. Is it too dangerous to draw a rune on a water jug so that the water vibrates and changes its composition? I mean, I wouldn't say it's too dangerous. I mean, if you're going to, listen, as I keep saying, this is for me. I don't mess with them. I don't draw them on myself. I don't do any of that. I have runes drawn on things, so I have done that. I do believe in rune magic, using them as sigils. So I'm okay with that. I think that's be aware though. Be respectful and cognizant of the power you're putting into that water. Are you really ready for that? I don't know which rune you're putting on there, but are you ready for it? Maybe you're not. And here's the thing about spirituality of old. Traditional spirituality is going into it that you are going to go through a shitstorm. You know it. People don't understand that that's a result of Christianity and New Age fluffy bunnyism as well. That this idea that everything that is spiritual is love and light. It's not. It's transformative. When somebody comes to me to train in spirit fighting, which I'm not training anybody in that now, but when they do, I sit them down and I explain to them, yes, you get all these powers and you get all this wonderful stuff, but in order to get the power, you have to go through major transformation. And they say, oh yeah, don't worry, I've done a lot of work on myself. And I'm saying, listen, I have to tell you, I have a responsibility to let you know, because there are times that I taught people and I didn't tell them, and they came apart at the seams, and I realized, holy crap, I have to tell them ahead of time. And so, most people don't stay through the whole teaching of the spirit fighting. They can't take it. So, when you go to train, here's another example. I don't know what you guys think of this guy, Yogi Bhajan, but he did some pretty crappy things. But he brought his version of Kundalini Yoga to the West, and he shares a story. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it definitely exemplifies what you would need to do with a traditional teacher. There was a teacher that was living in the mountains who knew a specific mantra and yogic something or other, and he wanted to learn that. And so he had to bow face down, get on his knees and kneel face down with his face on the ground for something like 3 days in a row, and couldn't move out of that for 3 days before the guy would even talk to him. When you go and train in real Kung Fu, not the kind of crap you find in most of the Kung Fu studios on your average street corner, or even the stuff that, Bruce Lee, claims to have known. When you go to learn the real kind of Kung Fu, you'll go to a teacher, and if the teacher decides to accept you, he will most likely give you a posture and put you in the corner and say, stand in that posture. Now, if you're from that culture, you know not to say anything. You stand in that posture until he tells you to get out of it. When you start to stand in that posture, you have no idea if you're going to be there for 10 minutes or if you're going to be there for 2 days. Your family already knows that you've been sent to this master, and so you may not come home for a week. They know the master's got you, and we may never see you again, or we won't see you for a while. You have no idea how long you're going to be standing on your head or whatever he told you to do. If you're not, like if you're a Westerner and you go, how long? He'll say, until I tell you to get out of it. And then he'll leave the room. He might leave the room for 2 hours. And if you get out of your posture, he's going to know. He's going to walk in, and if you try and get back in the posture before he gets in the door, he's going to know that you got out of the posture, and he's going to say, thank you, please go home, meaning don't come back. So people, you're asking me, is it too dangerous to do this? You're talking about the runes. You're talking about the dynamic forces of creation, maintenance, and destruction of the entire universe, everything in the universe, spiritual, physical, everything. And so your thought process should not be, is this safe? Your thought process should be, I'm thinking about wanting this rune in my life, and you have to be prepared for the transformation. When you are prepared for the transformation, put that on your cup, so that when you drink the water, that power of transformation, whatever you've chosen, is going to go into all the cells of your body. I don't do that. I'm not against doing it, but I would have to get myself in such a state where like I was prepared to die to experience whatever that rune. Let's remember, how did Odin discover these runes? He died. He died. He was prepared to cease his existence forever in order to get these runes. So, the more that you listen to me, the more responsible you're going to be with what you do with this stuff. If you're not ready for that, stop listening to me. Go back and listen to Joe Schmo New Age, WiccaRune.com. And he'll tell you that Isa is, frozen, stuck, and you can stay in that kind of limbo nonsense. If you want to listen to what I say and listen, I would have tremendous respect for anybody who decided to take whichever rune and carve it onto their drinking vessel, knowing that they are seeking to have that rune transform them on all levels with whatever the power that rune brings. If you can do that and you're willing to do that, and I support and recommend that you do that, you will have my respect. You'll have my undying respect. I'm not doing that right now. So I hope that answers your question there. Premium Tim's question: did you had any bad experiences with the runes that you whispered? So, hi Premium, I guess you're new to the channel. You can hear from what I'm saying that, I've had, yes, short answer, yes. I've had a lot of transformative. I may have experienced it in a way that I called it bad, but it's not bad. It just means that it was very transformative. It was very challenging. Yes, I've had, that's why I don't play around with them. Let's see, what else? Richard Bullard question. Drawing the rune Fehu on your forehead, third eye as you instruct, that relates to which planet and what deity? Well, the runes are not mantras. Mantras are a string of syllables put together. They're an equation. Mantras all have a deity, and they all have a planet. The runes are not mantras. Okay? So there's the answer to that question. Jedi Black Knight, Dieyush Peter, yeah, Sanskrit for Tiwash, right. Ghost in the Machine question. In Thunder Qigong, go up here to courses.thunderwizard.com and you'll see a link somewhere for Thunder Qigong, I believe. Thunder Qigong is the Thung chant Thurisaz, Uruj, and Ingvaj. Yes. I'll tell you why I gave that sound. So the sound this person is talking about is the seed sound for, well, I'm not going to write it down, is the seed sound for Thunar. It's also the seed sound for the Thurisaz rune. In esoteric Vedic mantra practice, whenever you want to get the essence of anything, whether it's a person, a deity, whatever it is, you take the first syllable of their name and then you put the NG sound after it. You'll see this written as an M. So like the Om syllable that you see, that people Om, they don't realize that that M is an NG sound. When you see it written in, I don't even know what that script is, there's a little dot on top of it. That's the NG sound. That's literally the Ing rune. So when you want to get the essence of Thunar, you chant Thung. If you want to get the essence of the Thurisaz rune, you chant Thung. You can do that with anything. So Ong would be the root seed sound of Odin. So interestingly enough, the most popular mantric sound in the universe is the seed sound for Odin. And who is Odin? Odin is the god of inspiration, the god of dynamic self-awareness. So when you chant Om, you are invoking Odin himself. Isn't that interesting? All right. Where are we now? Question. Jedi Black Knight. If the ng suffix can create a bija for a rune, does it not follow that ing can be linked to both ingvaj and isa? Yep. Because what is ingvaj? Ingvaj is kundalini. It is the kundalini sound. It was the original mantra before Om. Before the Om that everybody chants and that they, even in Vedic, you want to listen to a Vedic hymn, the Om, they start with that. Before that was Ing. Because who was the main god that the Vedics worshipped? They worshipped Indra. The majority of the Vedas are hymns are written to Indra, worshipping Indra. He was the god that they worshipped. So the sound ing would have been taking the essence of Indra. Indra, in his form of the lightning, represents Kundalini, the lightning that goes up the spinal column, the awareness, the psychological awareness of the individual. And so, or something about your question. So remember that Kundalini is about being attached to this world. Kundalini does not give you liberation from this world, like you'll hear you try and find out from the average person. They'll say Kundalini will give you awakening in the next life. Kundalini is about bringing things down into manifestation in this world. And so chanting ing is going to stimulate the Shakti. So ing is also associated with the Shakti, the feminine power. People don't know that Indra has feminine power. That's why women loved him. My fiance, who's no longer with us, she used to say to me, what I find so exciting about you is that you're so masculine, but there's also this femininity about you. I didn't know what to do with that. Now I understand what that means. It means, what she was saying is that a true man is fully realized, both his masculine and his feminine. So Indra was the embodiment of the masculine and the feminine, the same way that Shiva is the embodiment of the masculine and the feminine. But he exudes masculinity from a place of ing, of Kundalini Shakti. Isa is the self. So Kundalini is about the spiritual self. So yes, if you chant ing, you are not only bringing the power of Ingvaj together, but you're also empowering your identity, which is what Isa is. And then he says, if so, is it through our intent that we determine which rune to invoke? No. I mean, you can focus on one and you'll get that, but you're getting the benefits of both at the same time. Ing is itself very self-contained. Ing. It's the ng sound. The ing is not the e sound. So in reality, the Isa rune is e. E. You put the ng sound on it and that changes it. But if you want the essence of Isa, you have it in ing. The e sound is an interesting sound, and what I find so interesting about that is that, again, in that remember the 5 element breaths I told you about? There's a 6th sound, which is the sound of the central channel. And that sound is E. You chant E, E, and you open up the crown chakra and you stimulate the central channel, which is what? Looks like an I, looks like the letter I. It's the self. The divine self. This is what happens when you chant this stuff. This isn't arbitrary. There's nothing about these runes that are arbitrary. That's one of the things that bothers me about so-called modern rune masters. When you read their books, I won't mention their names, but if you know who I'm talking about, there's one guy in particular who is seen as like the rune blah, blah, blah in the heathen community. If you read his books, he'll say that the runes are arbitrary, that the meanings were imposed upon the symbols by ancient rune magicians, and that depending on what you project onto the rune is what you're going to get. Nonsense! There's nothing arbitrary about these runes. Jedi Black Knight. Okay, that's not a question. Premium Tim's question. What are the consequences when you put a rune tattoo on your skin or a bind rune that has more than one rune? Well, the consequences are you're going to get whatever that rune is. If you're not prepared for that rune, then you're going to be transformed, and or you are asking for the karma of that. For instance, what happened with the Nazis? They brought serious karma on themselves. White supremacists today who wear the swastika, wear the filfat, with the idea of doing the opposite of what the filfat represents, which is racism, exclusion, violence, separation, then what ends up happening is that you are asking that power to cleanse you of your ignorance. If your ignorance is that you project onto the world that there's superiority or separation or racial divisions or slavery or violence or any of that stuff, if you project onto that through that rune, it acts like a mirror, and guess what comes back at you? You're going to get just torn apart by that. So if you don't suffer tremendous issues as a result of that in the next life, whoever, this is true whether you use a symbol or not, but in this life, whoever you victimize, whoever you seek to control or harm or exclude, or whatever words you want to use, whatever groups of people, guess what you get to be next time? So if what you want to do is enslave people, then that is what's going to happen to you next time around. I'll give you an example and how karma, the cycle of karma continues. So I recommend people go onto my channel and watch the video I have about what are those people called? I can't remember the name. There's a Germanic tribal people. Crap. Can't remember. Anyway. Back around 2,000 years ago, when the Huns came into Northern Europe, they drove out big, large, like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Germanic tribespeople out of their, the Goths. That's what I'm trying to think of, the Goths. Go and watch my videos about the Goths and the, what they had to go through. So I want you to think about it. I was just talking about the Nazis. And what did the Nazis do? The Nazis put people of who they considered to be different ethnicities into concentration camps. Okay? That's what they're known for, putting Jews and Poles and Catholics and homosexuals and whoever else they could lump together that weren't Aryan, threw them into concentration camps. Okay, so have that in your mind. These are the people who are using that, using white. Now they identified as being white, and especially Germanic. They identified with that, and they took people that weren't like them and put them into concentration camps. 2,000 years ago, the Gothic people were driven out of their homeland by the Huns, and the Huns fought in ways that Europeans didn't fight. Europeans fought face to face. You went out onto the battlefield and you looked your enemy in the eye, you pounded your shield, and then you went at him. That was part of their warrior ethic. You stood up, you didn't hide. Here I am, I challenge you, bam. That's the warrior, their bravery ethic. The Huns didn't have that ethic at all. They were guerrilla warfare. They'd come out. That's the term parting shot comes from the Huns on the back of their horses shooting backwards as they're riding their horses. It was a parting shot as they were going back into the forest. And they were really good at it. And so these Goths didn't know how to fight against these Huns. So they were pushed out of their traditional homeland and they had no place to live. So they all gathered on the borders of Rome in what is now Turkey. I believe it was Turkey. Hundreds of thousands of them. And they wanted to become part of the Roman Empire. What do we have going on right now? What do we have going on right now in Central America? We have thousands of people who are massing the borders of the United States who want to become United States citizens. They're trying, they're escaping whatever they're escaping. I'm not saying right or wrong. I don't like that idea either of just people coming in, but it's interesting how history repeats itself. So here you had all of these Gothic people. Now bear in mind, 2,000 years ago, the most primitive people in the world were Germanic people, according to the Romans. According to the Romans, the Germanic people were as primitive to them as the people in the Amazon, the undiscovered tribes in the Amazon are to us. That is how primitive they were. That's how they looked at them. They saw them different. What the Roman women used to do is they used to bleach their hair blonde so they could look like the Germanic slave girl, right? And what do white women do now? They try and put their hair in whatever you call that, cornrows and all that kind of stuff because they want to look ethnic. It's all backwards now, but it's the same thing. So here you had the lowest of the low, and these people wanted to come into the Roman Empire, and the Romans held them at bay. And they went through all this, and finally the Romans said, okay, we'll let you in, but first we have to process you. So they created these huge concentration camps for these Gothic tribespeople. These Gothic tribespeople came into these huge concentration camps with the expectation that they were going to become Roman citizens. While they were in this concentration camp, the Romans took all the men of fighting age and put them on the front line and used them as human shields against other Germanic tribes that they were conquering. The old and the women and the children were in such horrible conditions that mothers were selling their children for dog meat. And this was going on for a long time. The warriors who are out there on the front line, the ones that survived, became the baddest warriors in the Roman Empire. They came back to their family and they saw the conditions they were in. And they said, screw that, we're not staying here anymore. And the soldiers gathered everybody up and they left to go to the closest Roman garrison to ask for food and to ask for citizenship. They got there and the Romans said no and tried to attack them. They destroyed the Roman garrison. They went to another Roman garrison. By now they're moving all around the Middle East. And finally they make their way all the way around the Middle East and they come back to, they go all the way through Africa, wiping out all of the Roman Empire along the way, trying to find their citizenship, and then they go back up into Italy. One goes into Spain, the other goes into Italy. That's the East Goths and the West Goths, Visigoths and Ostrogoths. And the Ostrogoths, the Western Goths, surround Rome, saying, all we want is food and citizenship. And Rome didn't do anything, and they starved themselves out until finally opened up the doors, and this was the fall of Rome. The people who are running the world today, what is the lingua franca of the world? The lingua franca, the language all over the world is English. The Anglo-Saxon culture, even though, there's not a lot of Anglo-Saxon people ethnically in terms of the whole world. The Anglo-Saxon culture has been running the world for the past 100 years. How did that all start? The same thing happened. The Anglo-Saxons were the lowest of the low. They were mercenaries that came over to fight for the British, who was a Roman citizen, fight for the British Celtic king of Britain, and they turned on them and said, "Get the hell out!" After these guys went and battled all over the British Isles and created, and fought off all the people that the British Romans were trying to protect themselves from. But they looked on these Anglo-Saxons as the lowest of the low, the most primitive, and then they kicked them out after they worked for them. And the Anglo-Saxons said, "Fuck that, we're not going anywhere. You promised us land and you promised us this. Now you're our enemy, fuck you. Hey, everybody else, come on over. These guys broke their word to us. This land is ours now." And those people who were seen as the lowest of the low, those people who were excluded, those people who were kicked out because of their religion and because of their race, became rulers of the world. The Nazis represent the inherent guilt that was shoved deep into the unconscious mind of the Germanic people when being white was being the minority, when being white was being, right? And I can hear all the racists chattering their teeth, and they're missing the point. The point is that now that white people have been running the world, the slavery that they have taken because of the disease that they took on, the shame that they took on when they were enslaved, when they were minimized, when they were treated as second-class citizens 2,000 years ago. That's deep into our DNA. That's in our DNA. It's been there for 2,000 years. It's been shoved into our unconscious mind. And like all prisoners, they identify with their captors. That's why the Germanic people have taken on Latin language and Latin religion. And so what we're doing now is we're doing the same thing that was done to us. This is what white nationalism is. White nationalism is nothing more than unconscious self-hatred and rage from 2,000 years ago that's being projected onto other people. So the point is that those people who were the lowest of the low, the least educated, the dregs of society, ended up ruling the world. The moral of that story is everybody who we are doing that to are going to end up ruling us. So if you want to keep all those brown people from destroying your culture, then stop minimizing them. Stop excluding them. Because all that does is it creates a pressure cooker. And that pressure cooker will explode. And eventually those that are being subjugated are going to take over. And they'll rule the world. Anyway, I don't know where that came from, but I was talking about the swastika and how ironic it is that what was happening on an unconscious level is that those Germans who became Nazis were asking the universe to cleanse them of their ignorance and to cleanse them of their self-hatred, because racism is just a projection of self-hatred. When you hate yourself, you project it onto other people. And so what was interesting is that the swastika was an unconscious plea to the universe to please cleanse me of my ignorance. So in this lifetime or the next, if you're going to put a rune on you, you better be damn well sure you know what that rune means. And you better damn well know what it is that rune's going to do. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with any of it. I'm just saying you better be conscious of it. Because if you take a rune onto yourself, that rune is either going to reflect back at you or it's going to do what you've asked. I don't see myself as being so aware of all of my unconscious issues that I am immune from whatever rune I would stick on my body. I mean, I wear this, but this is, I take this off when I'm done teaching. I take it off. I don't wear it around. I'm not so full of myself to think that this is who I am. I wear this when I teach. That's it. When I'm done teaching, I take it off. Question, the mouth and this ghost in the machine question, the mouth and the sexual meridians are new to me. What is I don't know what you're asking me. So ghost in the machine, have we had this discussion? Are you reading my books? Are you doing any of the practices? Have you worked with me? Because these kinds of questions sound so arbitrary. You know, to ask the question, the mouth and the sexual meridians are new to me. What is the different than chakras about them? It's such a general question. It really makes me want to ask, you know, what you're doing. So I don't have an answer to that question. I don't know how else to say that. Plastic surgery, Beth, question. Is it important to study the runes? I don't know. Is it important to study them? I mean, there's plenty of people in the world who don't know what the runes are and they get along just fine without them. The runes exist whether we study them or not. So is it important to you? Anything I pursue to free myself of religious dogma doesn't affect me. I don't know what that means. So are you asking me, if you study the runes, is that going to free you from religious dogma? I don't know. There's a lot of people out there who talk about runes and teach runes and chant runes who are filled with a lot of, you know, neo-heathenist dogma. So it's not impossible. Hopefully, if you work with me, you'll be freed of religious dogma. I guess that's the most valuable thing I can give you is, you know, watch my videos and read my books and work with me, because that's something that I believe that I am focused on, and I think I have some influence. I think I help a lot of people in that way. So if that's something that you want, you know, we'll look through my stuff and see if I can help you. Premium Tim's question, can I use runes for chakra work? Premium Tim's, it makes me want to say, why don't you just spend some time figuring out what the runes are before you do that? I don't know what you mean by chakra work. So go onto my channel. Let me just make the pitch again. If you're going to follow me, please know how to go onto my channel and search within my channel. So go onto my channel and type in chakras and see all the videos I have about chakras. So I want to educate you on what the chakras are. I don't think you know what they are. I know what you've probably been told what they are, but that's not accurate. So find out what the chakras are before you can even know what chakra work is. Because your question tells me you don't understand either the runes or chakras, because that's not how they work. They don't work like that, in my opinion. So I can't say that you couldn't do it, but again, if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me is to ask me questions about what I teach. You can't know what I teach if you haven't gone onto my channel and watched my videos and read my books. Courses.thunderwizard.com, you can find all my books there. Okay. Ghost in the Machine continued. I just got Thunder Shamanism. The mouth meridian is in the southwest and the sexual is in the east. So go back to your previous question. The mouth and the sexual meridians are new to me. What is different than chakras about them? I don't know that. What is different than chakras? I mean, than, T-H-A-N. What is different about them that is different than chakras? Is that what you're asking me? So you're asking me, it's a very complicated way of asking me, what is the difference between meridian points and chakras? Meridian points are points on the outside of the body. Some of those points correspond with chakra points, but this is not a chakra. This is a meridian point. You're talking about the meridian point here. This is not a meridian point. I mean, it's not a chakra, it's a meridian point. You got to know the difference between what chakras are. People don't know what chakras are. So I would say the same thing to you. Go onto my channel and watch the videos about chakras, and you'll know the difference. And why you can have energy centers, which are called dantians, and why you can have chakras, and why you can have meridian points all be in the same spot. Like the heart chakra is right here. The heart energy center, or Dantian, is right here. The heart meridian point is also here. They're all three different things, but they happen to be in the same spot. Point is, don't think about it too much. If you're following something I teach you to do, like if you've got Thunder Shamanism, great. Just do what I teach. Don't think about it. Stop trying to figure it out. What I learned is I learned practices of experience. When I went to go learn from my teachers, they didn't explain a whole hell of a lot. They just said, do this and do that and this, that, and here, there. And I had an experience. I didn't know what the experience was, but I was experiencing the universe. We live in this extremely over-intellectualized society where people spend all their time reading books and watching videos, and it's all this intellectual knowledge. So people go and watch these videos about the chakras and about the this and about the that, and it's just, it's just a bunch of head knowledge. I'm far more interested in you having an experience. The way for you to have an experience is to follow specific techniques. So if you've got my videos, just do what I teach and just don't overthink it. Don't worry about what meridian, what chakra, don't worry about it. Just do the techniques. Again, you walk into the Chinese master's studio and you say, I want to become a Kung Fu student. He says, great, go stand in the corner on 1 foot. And that's it. You'll have an experience over there and he knows what he's doing. So don't overthink it. That knowledge of the chakras and the meridians, all that intellectual stuff does nothing for you. The experience of doing the technique, of doing the practice, that is valuable. That will help you. All right. Noah Edwards, question. Over the accumulated time that you have meditated with the runes, are you more sensitive to different energies? I don't know what you mean by that. Did you notice an increase in vibrations near your navel? So you're asking me, are you asking me that question because that's what happened to you? A lot of people ask questions when they want to make a statement. Are you making a statement that you meditated on the runes and you're now more sensitive to different energies and you noticed an increase in vibrations near your navel? Because that's what it sounds like the question is. So I can say yes to no to your question. I'm not really sure why you're asking me. So it's, let me share you guys something about me. I'm far more interested in why you're asking a question than what the question is. Because I want to help you. And most of the time, people don't know what they're doing. They say things and do things and ask things, and they don't really know why. I'm the kind of person I want to get to the why. So I can figure out why, then I can help you. So I don't know why you're asking that question. Yvette Losoya, that's not a question. All right. Write the word question so I know that you're asking me a question. I really need to educate myself. I always thought chakras were energy centers. I've heard of dantians with qigong. Did you talk about yes, I talk about dantians in my videos. Please feel free to go onto my channel and watch my videos about it. Get my DVDs, read my books. I talk about it a lot in all of those places. Thank you for the question. All right, that's it. I don't see any more questions, and I've been talking for a while. How long have I been talking? It's not telling me how long I've been talking. Oh, there it is. That'll tell me how long. An hour and a half. So if we don't have any more questions. So here's the deal. Let me go see what I've got in front of me here. I've got my old man angry glasses on. So here's what we've got here. So if you see right, let me get rid of this. Or let me respectfully retire this picture. Where is it? Rune Wheel. Say goodbye to the Rune Wheel, that comes directly from Advanced Rune Shamanism book. If you want to know what that's all about, you can go read that book and you'll learn about that. All right. So courses.thunderwizard.com. That's where my books are. That's where my DVDs are. That's where all of my courses that I teach are. In terms of rune readings, if you want a rune reading from me or one of my rune apprentices, go to runereadings.thunderwizard.com. If you want to learn everything that I have on runes on video, which are, I don't even know how many hundreds of hours it is, go to runecertification.thunderwizard.com. Now, let me bring this up. So there, we'll say goodbye to those links, and we'll bring up these links. All right. To get the most out of what I teach, it's far more than watching videos. That is about 1% of value to you. The rest of the 99% of the value is in the practices and in the teachings. To get the most out of my teachings, I recommend that you make use of 4 tools. So, the first tool is you have to know where you're going. You have to know what your destination is. Your destination is what you came here to be. You have 2 extreme choices in this life. You can either be what you came here to be, which is the mystery. You know, if you want to be fulfilled in life, everybody's seeking fulfillment. You find out who you truly are and why you're here. Once you do that, you will have everything else. You will have prosperity, you will have happiness, you will have love, you will have fulfillment, and you will help others. That is what I call the destination. You need to know what that is. You have to have the map. A lot of people don't. So you need that, number 1. Second thing is you need a vehicle to get to that destination. The vehicle is what people have mentioned, Qigong, life force energy. You need to know how to tap into life force energy and to use life force energy to take you to your destiny. That's the second tool. The third tool is you need to know how to navigate to your destination. You need to know the rules of the road. And that is, there are 5 rules that the universe responds to. When you understand what these rules are, you don't have to figure everything out. You just know how to go through life. And if you follow those 5 rules, the universe has to obey you and has to serve you. Okay, that's the third tool, the rules of the road. The fourth one is what we're doing now. And that we're going to do even in more in depth in the Patreon channel. And that is the Manifestation Mastery course. At that level and above, then you're really going to get all of the things that I teach, the private stuff I teach about shamanism from beginning to end, from teaching you specifically how to do ritual, how to do mantra, how to do energy, how to work with the 8 energies, deities, the 9 worlds, all of that stuff, as well as now taking it into practice and learning how to manifest and get the universe to obey you, to become a god on earth. And starting this week, the kind of Q&As that we have here, I'm going to have on that channel specifically for people who are reading the books, who are doing the work and have specific questions. Those people keep asking me, when can we have our own Q&As so that you don't have to keep telling general stuff to people that are just showing up, or the looky-loos or the crazies or whatever. So if you're really serious about getting me to answer specific questions about what I teach, then you're going to want that 4th tool, which is at thunderwizard.com. To get all of those 4 tools, go to neo.thunderwizard.com. It's the most valuable set of tools that I can give you. And that way you'll have a clear path on how to master this Thunder Wizard path that I'm teaching. Okay, so if there's any last minute questions, I'll take a look at them here. Adam Steidel question, how often are you live? I will be live now that I've got my live streaming, privileges back. Now that I'm doing that, I will be on once a week, probably 2 to 3 times a week. We'll see what happens. I'm moving to Australia and New Zealand for a while, and we'll see what the time change does for me when I do that. But for now, for the next couple of months, I will show up Fridays and or Saturdays and or Sundays, anywhere from 6:30 to 8:30 Pacific time. That's usually when I'm ready to come online and do this. So, click on the subscribe to the channel and click on the bell button so that when I'm on, you'll get the text or something in case you got nothing better to do and you want to listen to me. It'll come on. I sometimes come on live, just when I get a weird hair up my ass, but those are the times I'm normally on. Okay? Thank you for the question. All right, that's it for me. tonight, my friends. I will see you next weekend on the live Q&As. All right. Talk to you guys later.